All right, buddy. Welcome to another edition of the Leadership and Live podcast with your host, Ricardo D. Rice, and I would say co-host, but Simone is out temporarily. She will join us a little shortly. And we are back to another episode. And you know this face. He's here every season because we need him. He's the man. I'm going to let him introduce himself for those that do not know.
I'm Attorney Gerald Griggs, the 13th president of the Georgia State Conference, and just an overall troublemaker.
Is that your normal? I thought you normally say something else.
No, that's normal. That's normal.
All right, so the last time there has been some changes. So the last time he was here, he was in a position that he's no longer in. So I'm going to let him explain that one for us.
Yeah, so I'm now the previous immediate past president of the Georgia State Conference of the NAACP. My term ended the first of the year. And so, of course, I will always be a member of the NAACP. I'm just no longer the head of the Georgia State Conference.
Okay. So what are we doing now? I mean, I know you have your practice, but
Yes.
What are we doing now? Like, what is your focus now that you're a little more free? What's your focus?
I'm still fighting to protect the rights of everyday Georgia citizens, just in an individual capacity. I think that the transition was necessary. After 2 terms, I think it's always time for a leadership change. And so I will still be matriculating through the state of Georgia, fighting for civil rights and fighting to make sure people's rights are defended, just not in the capacity as a state conference president.
Okay. All right. So what should we be on the lookout for? Like, what's happening? You all around Georgia. So what is actually happening? Because there are so many dumpster fires. I don't know where to look. And if I don't know where to look and I have some kind of working background knowledge, I can only imagine how the everyday citizen feels, especially minorities. What should we be focused on?
Well, there's an attack on civil rights happening throughout the state of Georgia. They attempted to roll back access to body cam videos in the previous session. That bill died. We have a big election season here, both the primary elections in May and the midterms in November.
Wait, hold on. You said roll back.
Yes, they were trying to ban access from news outlets and regular citizens to access to dash and body cam videos that showed a death because they wanted to protect the solemnity of the family from being able to witness that. Yeah, it was a smoke screen to keep us from getting police accountability.
I'm trying to figure out how you write that. How did they write that to make it sound even feasible to even get into the chamber or close to it?
Initially it was a zombie bill. What that means is it was a bill that was supposed to prevent people from putting up mug shots when somebody's initially arrested. They added some additional language that would prevent the release of body cam and dash cam that show the death of a person to protect the rights of the family to not have to see that on social media.
Well, okay, so because I don't really understand. I understand what damn caches do.
Yes.
But how does that footage, so if there's a stop and something happens, do the police confiscate the footage and then they keep it and release it when they want to?
Their own footage. We're talking about their body cam, their dash cam footage. They would not be allowed to release it. So now, once an investigation is over, they can release it. Or if the lawyers get it, they can release it. But what they're saying is we won't release it to anyone ever because there's a death involved in this particular body cam or dash cam. So the public would not have access.
And on the back end, what was their goal? Just to not be able to have that footage where people can see what actually happened?
Well, see, they believe on YouTube and other platforms, people are monetizing police-involved encounters that ended in death. So they want to stop that. What they actually were trying to accomplish, and again, the bill died, and it could be brought back up next session, but it died effectively on sine die, the last day of the legislative session. But basically, they did not want the release of in-custody deaths caused by law enforcement because we all know that leads to protests, lawsuits, and then legal change.
Okay, so that makes more sense. Okay. Okay, that was curious. I was very curious about that because I just thought about that. We talked about, I was like, I don't know what happens to that footage if you get stopped and it goes left. It's your footage, but do they confiscate it if they want to? Okay.
Well, usually you end up getting charged. And so you would get the footage in discovery. But in this particular case, if you're not charged, if it passed, if it was not charged and somebody died, nobody would ever get the footage. Not news media, not lawyers, not anybody, because it would be sealed based on that law. But of course, it didn't pass.
Does it have any hope of being brought back up? Like voting?
I'm sure it'll be brought back up. But I hope that elected officials understand that you'll get strong pushback from the public and you will be unelected.
which we are seeing a lot of, especially.
We're seeing people getting
I've never respected the
unelected.
primaries until this go round. Now I understand better how important primaries are because, like, wait, we don't have to even vote on these losers. If enough of those losers get together, they get rid of each other. I was like, so we didn't really have to do anything if we can let the primaries kind of do what they do. I've never seen that in action until this go round. So it was actually very.
It's interesting to watch the weeding out process.
Yeah, especially in your own party. If they don't like you and you've been an incumbent, they're like, yeah, we don't want you. We're going to put somebody else against you in your own party. It's nice to actually watch play out.
Yeah.
I was very impressed. Mm-hmm. But I digress. Okay, carry on. What was the other stuff?
The other stuff, data centers are popping up all over the state of Georgia. So there's a strong pushback because they primarily put them in minority communities, and we see environmental pollution. We see a lot of gentrification and things like that because of the data centers and the decrease of the property value because of the environmental issues. So we're seeing a lot of that.
Well, let me ask, okay, because you bring up all the curious stuff, because I see these things. I'm just like, so is there a catch-22 to that? Like, the thought process is, for the outsiders looking in, is if we get a data center, that's more jobs, and it could increase the community.
It could, but it could also drain your power grid, pollute your water, and make your property value plummet because no one wants to live next to a data center. I mean, the increased drain on the electrical grid alone will cause serious environmental issues because they have to, once they use the power, they have the offshoot, the waste, environmental waste that goes into your land, it goes into your drinking water. So these are all things that we're dealing with. And when I say we, I mean the NAACP in Memphis. And now you're seeing it happen in Atlanta and surrounding communities.
I didn't thought about it for a data center. Because these are not small facilities. These are
these are
huge
massive
facilities.
Just think of, the airport. They could be that big, like a terminal at the airport, that big.
What areas were they looking at for Georgia?
I've seen a few of them down in middle Georgia. There was some conversation about some on the south side, South Metro area, but they're in the planning stages now. So this is the time that citizens can give voice to pushback. We've seen some East Georgia, some West Georgia, but none have seriously broken ground yet. They're still in the zoning and planning stages.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, I had a question, but I can't remember.
You said some other things. And then ICE. Of course, you've heard about what's happening in Social Circle with the ICE detention facility. That is now on hold because that community pushed back very strongly. And then there was some other smaller facilities that they were going to use for detention facilities. And of course, ICE is here in Georgia, actually at the airport. So we heard a lot about the TSA agents that were not getting paid, and now they're getting paid, but ICE is at the airport, literally helping to TSA agents swipe your ID when you go for baggage.
We're getting paid double the money.
Double the money.
Do it.
The TSA agents just got their first check.
Which apparently, because TikTok is the go-to, and apparently on TikTok there was one that was saying they still haven't gotten another check.
Oh,
she was like, they just got the first retro check. They got the retro check,
but they hadn't got their regular. They hadn't got
their regular check, so they're not even back in motion.
Well, that's why you look at TikTok to make sure you know what's happening.
I didn't think it'd be such a premier area to find out what's actually going on, but it actually is, because which I followed her before, but it first started, and she was like, "Yeah, we got the retro check, but we still not getting our regular check." So she was like, we're almost right back where we started. Is this some mastermind attempt to privatize TSA?
I think so. I think what you're seeing is the choke points that the administration is trying to use to privatize many functions of the federal government that they see as waste. Now, of course, transportation safety is not waste. 15, 20 years ago, we saw what happened with the Twin Towers and the other planes that crashed on September the 11th because of a lack of transportation safety at the airport. So I'm not quite sure why the administration feels this is a choke point that they could cut because they are essential workers.
So in the grand scheme of things, if we start privatizing, because we had a conversation yesterday, and the thought process was if they privatize stuff, then it gives them more leeway to kind of move the way they want to move. Is there some grand scheme? Because you've read Project 2025,
yes,
right?
All 900 pages.
Jesus. Is what we're seeing now a part? I mean, we've seen major parts of it play out, but what we're seeing now, these intimate spaces, is this in that plan?
Part of it is in the plan. Now, to defund TSA, no. To privatize TSA, yes. And so you create a crisis like not funding TSA, and then you move to privatize it was part of the plan in Project 2025. And so you're seeing this in multiple agencies. Of course, in the Department of Education, the plan in Project 2025 was completely obliterated, get rid of it, eliminated.
Let's stay there. Since you read that. And what was the plan after they obliterated it? What was the plan?
There was no plan.
So they just want to get rid of the Department of Education.
Get rid of the Department of Education and send it back to the states. Allow the states to be in the business of educational policy and implementation. But of course, we know many of the states, particularly the southern states, don't do a very good job of prioritizing education. So you do need a federal watchdog at the top. And we have to remember the Department of Education has only been around since the early 80s. So we need to continue to push to federalize this so there's a standard throughout the nation of how we implement and fund. And that's one of the things people don't understand. A lot of federal funding for education comes through the Department of Education, and a majority of the budget that is for local public schools comes from the Department of Education.
Yeah, because when we had Jackson here yesterday, one of the bills she said that came up was alleviating property taxes and things of that magnitude, which I immediately recognized from another conversation that goes to fund school districts and stuff.
Absolutely.
So it's like, once again, I don't have a problem with y'all dismantling things that may not have worked, but y'all don't have another plan. Y'all just want to dismantle stuff, and there's no alternative to pick up that slack or offset what they're doing.
Well, see, what they sell people on is your taxes will go down, but they don't tell you the back end of what your taxes were going to pay. If you tell me my property taxes are high because I have a great school district, I, as somebody who has a child that's currently in a public school and one that will be in a public school, I don't mind paying that. But if you just say, oh, I'm going to cut your property taxes and don't tell you why, of course that appeals to people. They're like, oh, you pay less taxes. But if you're paying less taxes and you don't have an adequate or even decent public school system, you're going to be paying it on the back end for the children who weren't adequately educated who are coming to rob you. So, I mean, you got to think about that.
So let's go, because I remember my question from the data issue. So when we speak about gentrification and we talk about new companies coming into areas with you said, where was the place you said, Mississippi, that they already seen as
Memphis.
In Memphis.
Yes.
Was it an issue of them not wanting to train new talent, but flying in other talent to come in and paying them more, and then they're going to gentrify the areas around the data center?
Well, first off, the main issue was lowering the property value and polluting the community there with the massive runoff from the data center, because it takes a lot of energy to cool these computers, and the cooling flows off into the water system and then pollutes the water. But yes, there was not a lot of hiring of people from the community. They were bringing people in, and their excuse was it's going to cost so much to train these individuals. We could easily bring people that are already experienced. And of course, if we lower the property value, it gives a lower cost of living here. So we thought we were, doing a better thing for the community. But of course, community got together, is pushing back. The NAACP is part of the initiative. They've actually sued Elon Musk for these, because these are not X, but these are Elon Musk data centers that were being built in Memphis.
So is that the ones we're looking at now are also owned by him? The one they're trying to put here?
No, these are other companies, the ones they're trying to put here, because what you're seeing is with the growth of AI, you're seeing multiple companies that need to have these massive data centers to run this artificial intelligence, because you got to store the data. They're taking in all of this information. You got to be able to store it in the supercomputers.
So in a best case scenario, what happens to that Memphis community? They make them shut down? Like, what's the best case scenario?
Well, there are ways that you can cool the supercomputers without polluting the water. So what they wanted was the regulatory agency to enforce the regulations that would keep the supercomputers from polluting the water. It's not so much that they didn't want the data center. They want the data center to run in a greener way so it doesn't affect their community. And then, of course, provide jobs to the community and up the property value and substantially raise their condition of living.
So what do they, because I'm thinking now, if this is a good case study. So for the community that surround the places that are trying to come in now, what would be good arguments? Like when they go to community meetings and this comes up, what would be good arguments they could avoid what's happening in Memphis?
First, go to your zoning meetings. You got to understand what properties and plots of land are being zoned for so you know what's coming. And then have a community benefits agreement with that corporation that's coming in so you can make sure your environment's protected, jobs are created, that they have set asides for if there is an environmental catastrophe that happens so that people can be made whole. So these are things that they can look for and use Memphis as a case study. But I think most importantly, it means get involved at the local level so you can know what's happening. County commission meeting will ultimately make the decision that the zoning board approved or disapproved of the use of this land. So being in tune with what's happening at the county level and the city level for these businesses that are coming in.
Okay. I didn't know this was such a thing. Well, honestly, I didn't, because I'm thinking about like a car with a radiator and antifreeze and just thinking like that. And you just seeing like this stuff just oozing out into the water and things of that magnitude. Okay. The last time you were here, we talked about jails and how bad they were. Any progress?
No progress at all. I think that people have put the jail conversation on the back burner because we're talking about ICE detention facilities. But the conditions in the ICE detention facilities are akin to what's happening in our local detention facilities. So when you see the privatization of ICE facilities, you got to understand where the choke point is in the first place. They wouldn't need the ICE detention facilities if the local jails were available. And the local jails are not available, and it's a good thing because many of the local sheriffs are not using the 287G program to act as federal officers.
What does that mean?
Basically, you can deputize local law enforcement to be ICE enforcement. What I think is missing in this conversation is the same conditions that are at the ICE detention facilities are the same conditions that are at the local jails. So when we talk about mass incarceration, we talk about the militarization of law enforcement, it didn't start at the federal level. It started at the local level, and it started at the jails. The conditions at jails like the Macon Bibb detention facility is still atrocious. Fulton County still atrocious. DeKalb County still atrocious. There's situations that happen in the Clayton County jail that should never happen. So I think people are missing that conversation because we're so focused on, and rightfully so, what we're seeing go viral with these incidents with ICE, and we're seeing the mass deportation force, but we need to stay focused on the local jails as well because the conditions are similar.
So what are the issues with local jails? Because that's state stuff. That's not federal stuff. That's just state.
That's state and local county. So what we need to look at is how these facilities are maintained, whether or not they're constructing new facilities, and then ultimately what's happening in the criminal justice system that's causing the overcrowding at the jail. So if we're not moving cases, meaning having adjudications, having trials, having dismissals, it's going to back up the jail. And now you have conditions at the jail because of overcrowding that puts a strain on the infrastructure of the jail as well as the staffing.
Because that means people are just kind of sitting around waiting.
They're sitting around waiting for trial 2, 3, 4 years. They're getting more cases because people are stabbing each other in the jail by using pieces of the jail to attack each other.
And that's in local prisons?
That's in local jails. Yes.
The ones that you don't stay in that long, like the transporting ones. This stuff is happening in those jails.
That's mainly where it's happening. I have clients who say if they had a preference, they prefer to go to the Department of Corrections than to stay in local county facilities because it's dangerous and the buildings are old and decrepit and falling apart. So they would prefer to be in the DOC, which I found strange.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
That's a real conversation, especially in many of these metro area facilities. There's a very serious decaying problem, mold, rodent infestations. Now, the worst that I've ever seen was in Macon, and it had all of those things and worse. Electrical issues, lighting. It was just bad. But yes, to answer your question, the situations at the jail are still bad.
So are we talking about a funding issue, a personnel issue? Because when I think of a local jail, I think of where my cousin might go for a DUI while he's waiting for trial or something. What are we missing that make these conditions so bad? Is it funding? Is it we don't have enough officers? What are we talking about?
All of that. But I think most importantly is the backup of the criminal justice system. If you are having long detention pre-trial, these are the situations that are created on the system, the lack of infrastructure, the decaying of the aging facilities. And then, of course, the situations that create a sense of despair for those individuals who don't see the light of day. I don't know when I'm going to have a trial, so I'm just sitting here. And of course, I'm with other individuals who are feeling the same angst, and situations happen.
So after a certain time period, don't they move them? Or they just stay in local jail indefinitely until they get a trial?
Well, hopefully they get granted bond or their cases adjudicated and they get released or sent into the Department of Corrections. But no, it could take months to years.
So they're literally just sitting in local jail.
Local jails, yes.
Okay, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have more with Attorney Gerald Griggs on the Leadership Been Live podcast with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. All right, and we are back. As you can see, the seat is not vacant anymore. Simone is here. Yay! I'm not going to get her. Like yesterday, we did do 12, so it's fair. I'm not even annoyed about it. Like
Thank you.
I did this before you got here. It's much better with you, but I know how to do this in your absence. I know how to do this in your absence. It's fine. All right, so last question about jail, because I do have one more question. In a perfect world, what would be a good outcome? More money, more personnel?
A good outcome would be fully funding the criminal justice system so that it moves more efficiently to adjudicate people's cases. So you wouldn't have people languishing in jail. And you wouldn't also have people in the Department of Corrections. If it really was a criminal justice system, we'd adequately fund it so we can investigate these cases, hold people accountable that actually did commit the crime, and release those who didn't.
Okay. All right. So actually, now I think about it, yesterday's conversation that Jackson said they got them a raise, the judges and stuff, the part-time judges and stuff.
That's
so
good.
that should help.
Now we need more judges.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's move to the politics side and elections and things of that magnitude. I'll let you ask your questions first.
For sure. I hate I missed that conversation, but there's more to come, I'm sure, on that. So it's midterms. It's an important year. Mm-hmm. It's an election year, and most years are. So we like to talk about that. We like to talk about turnout. And I know we've had conversations with you before about turnout and how important that is. And I know that we've talked to you, ahead of an election. So yeah, I know you're very big on this, but I am curious what you think we stand to gain this year, potentially. Like what would the best possible outcome for Black Georgians look like, for people of color in Georgia look like, for the governor's race, for any other races that you may have your eye on?
Well, I think this is a historic time in Georgia, the possibility of the election of the first African-American governor in the state's history. Of course, we've seen candidates run. One almost got to the seat 2 elections ago, which would be Stacey Abrams. But now I'm seeing on the Democratic side, Keisha Lance Bottoms, Mike Thurman, Jason Estevez, Derek Jackson, Olu Brown, and so many others trying to break that glass ceiling at the highest level. I think it's an interesting time. I also think there's an opportunity to flip the House and potentially the Senate on a federal level, which would benefit African Americans because we've seen an all-out assault on civil rights by the current administration, and that could act as a check on that by confirmation of judges, also potentially an impeachment and a conviction. So, there are some things there. I think on the state level, there's an opportunity for Georgia to change in the state house. And so there are a lot of state house races and state Senate races for Black Georgia that potentially could change the complexion of leadership here in Georgia and ultimately open the door to a more inclusive Georgia. So I'm excited about this electoral cycle. I think turnout, especially in the May, which is primary elections, will be high. Because not only are you electing your primary participant, but you're also having judges and some DAs in the race that are running, and then Supreme Court. I kind of figured about that. There's a possibility of a change in the complexion and makeup of the Supreme Court. There are two women running, one an African-American that's running for a Supreme Court position, which would add another African-American female to the bench, if possible, at the Supreme Court level. So it's a lot.
That's what I was going to ask you. What's the makeup of the state Supreme Court right now for folks who don't know?
Right now, there's one African-American, one Asian-American, and the rest European Americans.
Okay. Yes. Male or female?
1, 2, 3 males.
Okay.
2 females, I believe. Yes.
Okay.
I'm curious, as it pertains to,
and then there are others, but they're running for those seats. I know that didn't get to 9, but yeah, go ahead.
Sure. When we talk about civil rights, what have we lost that you're just like, I cannot believe we lost this?
Diversity, equity, inclusion. Many people know the buzzwords, but don't know what that actually does. Mm-hmm. Basically, you're seeing the wholesale gutting of affirmative action, diversity programs that allow for the entry into the workforce. You've seen 400,000 African-American women lose their jobs. You've seen almost 300,000 African-American men lose their jobs. Mm-hmm. You're seeing an all-out assault on voting. You saw them literally issue a search warrant and take the voting rolls here in Fulton County, which is a whole nother conversation. You've seen a cut in funding or attempt to cut in funding at HBCUs to the tune of almost $500 million. So these are the things that you're seeing this administration do. You're seeing the gutting of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice and repurposing that into election integrity unit, which was the ones that snatched the voting rolls. So you're seeing a lot as an attack on civil rights. And then the most important that I think a lot of people are missing, there was literally an oral argument last week on birthright citizenship, which is the 14th Amendment. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people on Al Gore's internet or Beyonce's internet are arguing that this doesn't affect Black people, but that was literally one of the civil rights amendments that granted African Americans citizenship. It literally says those that are born or naturalized here are citizens. So if you gut the 14th Amendment, those that are the children of those individuals who were chattel slaves will no longer have birthright citizenship. So regardless of how they frame it, talking about this about criminal illegals, and that's an oxymoron in and of itself, because many of the people that are being arrested have not been convicted of anything. So you can't just label somebody something. But if you gut birthright citizenship, all the rest of the civil rights can fall as well.
Yeah, there's a few conversations that not even too many, a handful of Black people on the internet and a whole bunch of people who follow those Black people on the internet have really enjoyed saying has nothing to do with us. Is completely another ball game. We just need to sit home, not worry about it, watch something else, do our nails, like watch TV. But they directly affect our community a lot. And a lot of people I don't think appreciate now that the DOJ's origin, but that's particularly dark because of why the DOJ exists, right? Which is only to do with us.
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of the Department of Justice was to protect those newly emancipated slaves from the backlash that was occurring after the end of slavery. So I think people who really want to get a clear picture of what's happening need to read W.E.B. Du Bois's Reconstruction, Black Reconstruction. It lays it all out. We talk about the Freedmen's Bureau. We talk about the reason the DOJ was created, the reason why they had to go into the South with soldiers to enforce civil rights laws
that they were not following.
And so if we gut the 14th Amendment, which also has due process clause there that applies to the states, you see the very impetus of civil rights crumble. So for those that are talking on the internet that don't have a JD, that don't practice law, please stop giving people civil rights advice. This is the very reason why your ancestors were fighting. And if you're taking your day off to do your nails or do something else, your grandchildren are going to remember exactly what you did in that time. And so I just think that people need to understand that, yes, there's a lot going on. Yes, there's a lot of distractions happening. But anytime, for the first time in American history, you see a sitting president go watch a Supreme Court oral argument and then leave halfway through because he didn't like the way it was going, you should understand that civil rights are under direct assault. And then I have another message to the Black people who decided to go to the White House for Black History Month. Why don't y'all have a conversation with your president about his assault on civil rights instead of shucking and diving? Shout out to you, Terrence Williams. So what I would just simply say is people need to allow the experts to do what the experts actually do. We will not allow the degradation of our rights under the guise of, oh, they're attacking somebody else. That amendment is for everyone, but it's bought with the blood of our ancestors. So we will fight to the very end to protect every single civil right that we were granted by our ancestors.
That was a perfect note to end on. So maybe we can chop this up a little bit because I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So I do think that people should get some education on what they can and can't do, maybe safely, or maybe even just needing to know the risks. We've talked about this before. I know with you, I know we've had guests from the ACLU too, just talking about protesting, talking about the First Amendment, talking about voting, right? And what we can and can't do to help people vote. Can I take people? Can I bring water bottles? We talked about this with bail, bailing out more than a handful of people. Can I still do that? Like, is that no longer my First Amendment right? So I do think it may be good that we kind of lay out like what people can and can't do safely, especially if people if they're trying to avoid any and all potential legal trouble, which I know is more important to some than others. Mm-hmm. But I think that would be a good conversation to have also, because I also know a lot of people are just a little too afraid that if they're a little afraid or a little confused, then they just don't participate in the process at all.
Well, we have to remember that, and this is me taking my lawyer hat off for a moment. We didn't get any of these rights by being afraid. So at some point, you have to recognize that there's an inherent danger of standing up for what's right. But secondly, we have to remember that there's a third co-equal branch out there. And for the most part, that third co-equal branch has been the guardrails, has been the check, which is why you see this administration always going after the judges, because the judges are holding the line. I don't agree with all of them all the time, but even some of our conservative brethren recognize that the Constitution is the final say. Mm-hmm. And so you have an absolute right to protest, First Amendment right to protest. Now, will they infringe on that right? Yes. Are you potentially going to jail for saying certain things? Probably. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you will be exonerated and you will probably be compensated. And so what I want people to understand is this is that time in your lifetime where you got to be Rosa Parks or Claudette Colvin or Dr. King or Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, all these legends you heard of the past. This is the time for you to do that in this age. Yes, there's an assault on whether or not you have free speech. Yes, there's assault on the Fourth Amendment. We see these traffic stops. I just posted one the other day. Young lady wasn't doing anything wrong. Got the wrong car, wrong gender, wrong everything. They still pulled guns on her and had her come to the back of the car and took her into custody. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have a great lawsuit if she gets a great civil rights lawyer. We just resolved a couple of those cases. I can't go into detail, but we resolved a couple of those cases where they had the wrong person. So I think that people need to understand this is the time that you show that the Constitution and the amendments still work, and the brilliance of our ancestors to fight to have codified amendments. And what I want people to understand is there's laws and statutes, and then there's constitutional amendments. That's the bedrock. It takes the removal of an amendment to end a civil right. Not an executive order, not even the passage of a statute, but the actual removal of an amendment. And there's a process for that. And we're nowhere near that. So when the president of the United States issues an executive order on voting, it's not worth the paper it's written on. When he issues an executive order telling individuals that they can't make NIL deals in college, it's not worth the paper it's written on. When he makes an executive order telling people that they should do this, this, and this, he does not have the power to do that if it's not in the Constitution. And many of the things he's doing are not in the Constitution. And that's why it's incumbent upon us to use that third co-equal branch, we're going to be spending a lot of time in court.
Yeah, for sure. So can we talk about that strategy more too? Because we were also talking about how many of looking at a few executive orders, also looking at how many things Trump has initiated that have didn't come to fruition, but may have taken a year, 2 years, maybe a little bit longer to play out. And we're just talking about all the instability in between, right? Like, do people end up, right, TSA or like even not Trump particularly, but like funding DHS? Sure, even if everything gets caught back up, how many, I think they said 500 plus employees no longer are TSA agents. They found something else to do.
Yeah, we were
right?
talking about that outside with, what were we talking about?
We were just talking about just the instability of not knowing what's happening once the president issues something.
Sesame
Street and stuff, when they defunded NPR and now they got the funding, and it's like, okay, well, where do we go from here? Yeah. Are there leaders that have the vision that can reimagine? Because it's a great opportunity to reimagine Sesame Street or something like that for this decade or this space. But, do we have the leaders that have the vision to reimagine these spaces? And like you said, what happens in the in-between time? Like, well, luckily for Sesame Street, I think they went to Netflix and were able to get a better life and a better space. But but like, what about for students who are in those HBCUs, like during that period? Or what about for the people who may have lost their jobs in particular because of the verbiage around affirmative action? Like, I know I've seen entire organizations close their DEI departments or change the name of some of their programs if they were implying that there was going to be equity involved in a program. All those sorts of changes that, just kind of live there just so people or corporations can feel safe. Like, how can we as a people in particular just try to be more resilient than that and wait these things out? Like, is that possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible. And I think, you asked, do we have leaders? I think in moments of crisis, leaders step up. So, before what happened to Claudette and what happened to Rosa in Montgomery, we didn't know who the leaders were. And then the leader stepped up. And so I think that we need to understand that this is that calling moment, that time where you feel something is wrong. Man, I'm about to quote John Lewis. You see something that's wrong, you feel something's wrong, you have an absolute responsibility to stand up, to say something, to do something, to get in some good trouble. Shout out to Representative Lewis. But I think that people need to understand. So like when you cut NPR, all their funding, they pivoted.
Yeah.
They pivoted to YouTube, they pivoted to Netflix, and now they're running a more streamlined program. And they also show that you can stand up to this administration. I think far too long, people have just said, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. But if you look in your history, it's a history of folks that stood up. It's like, look, we're not doing that. And so I think that's the moment in history that we're in, and leaders step up. But I think we do have to reimagine. And one of the great things about this era is we have a beautiful system that's coming into focus, and that is the internet. So whether they ban books or they say they're going to get rid of DEI when they're not getting rid of DEI, we can pivot, we can shift. A lot of the TSA agents went and got better jobs in the private sector where they had better opportunity for healthcare and other things. So we got to reimagine, retool. We are in a revolution, like the Industrial Revolution, Civil Rights Revolution. We are in the technological revolution. And so we got to think outside the box. And we also have to teach a lesson to all the corporations who thought it was a good thing to do to feel safe at the denigration of groups of people, similar to what happened to Target. Okay. So we have to show the resilience and strength of the people to know, regardless of what the government is saying, we're doing this. And you might want to be on the right side of this, because history and your economic forecast is not going to be great for you if you move in a different direction. Notice all the companies that stuck with diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah. Their stock is through the roof.
Yeah.
The ones that didn't, it looking like they bought Trump University or Trump steaks. So
those things no longer exist.
No longer exist.
No, they don't exist.
So I just think that people need to understand this is that moment. 9 out of 10 times in court, he loses. Yeah. Lost to me a couple times. And so I just want people to understand this is that moment. The leaders are stepping up in all spaces. And if you want to be a part of this, you have to put your foot down. You have to draw a line. Look, we're not going past this line. If they go past this line, well, there are going to be consequences.
Yeah, history is very unkind, especially in the internet age.
Yeah,
very.
It's a hot mess. Moment of honesty, moment of truth.
Mm-hmm.
What names are you hearing? Because we talk about the possibility of having a Democratic governor. What names are you hearing? Because we only think about like Metro Atlanta and the things we hear in this space, but you go all out to other places that we don't even be thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
What names are you hearing? Who are the forerunners in other spaces?
So right now, if you were to poll Georgia, I believe the front runner would be Burt Jones. Coming in a strong second would probably either be Jeff Duncan or Michael Thurman. And then bringing up the rear, Rick Jackson and Keisha Lance Bottoms. I think it's going to be a tight race. I think both sides is going to go to a runoff. And then we will see who's best for Georgia. But what I would say to all of the candidates, even the ones I didn't name, y'all are doing a real horrible job of going around this state.
Horrible.
Well, that wasn't that Stacey's downfall too?
Yes.
That she stayed in the same places that we talk about, not other places.
Metro Atlanta is great, but get outside the bubble. And for those that are on the internet and the commercials, stop.
They're the worst.
Go talk to the people.
Oh, those ads.
I'm tired of seeing the Burt Jones and Rick Jackson ad. And Rick Jackson, do you think you live in Mississippi or do you live in Georgia?
Is that the one you were talking about? Is that a Republican?
They're both awful. I was talking about Burt Jones.
The stuff that you are putting on our airwaves, I promise you, if you're elected governor of this state, you will see a whole lot of me in court, the same way your president does. So I just think that people need to understand that Georgia is different. There's a reason why Brian Kemp became a moderate. And it has nothing to do with his willingness to do that. Georgia is different. We are the birthplace of civil rights, and I would argue we are the birthplace of social justice. Try us if you want to. But I think the names that I hear a lot are, you hear a lot about Jeff Duncan. You hear a lot about Burt Jones. You hear a lot about Michael Thurman. Michael Thurman, I got to give him credit. As I travel this state of Georgia, I see Michael Thurman as much as I see the people I'm going to see.
Okay.
So he's making the rounds. But I think others are blowing off forums to their detriment, are running on name ID, thinking that simply because you got name ID in Metro Atlanta, you're going to have name ID in the state. Georgia, big state, 4 regions. Regions.
I forget that Savannah's a part of. I'm not even gonna lie. I
You
forget
got
that Savannah's Georgia. When you live here, you just think
the
about
mountains.
Atlanta.
You got the beaches. You got the plains.
I might forget about the north.
You got the south part of South Georgia, and then you got Metro. Yeah, the beaches. And so I just think that people need to understand that there are a lot of people in the state. There are over 11 million people in the state. 7 million of them are registered voters.
Jesus.
So you got to win Columbus, Valdosta. You got to Macon, Brunswick, Savannah.
I forget about Brunswick.
Tifton,
you
Perry.
feel like Columbus is like Augusta too? Like
Floyd, which is Rome. You got to go over to Dalton.
Dublin.
Got to go to Dublin. I mean, it's so many cities. And what I love about this state,
counties.
I know.
159 counties. It's so beautifully diverse. And so if you are only appealing to one type of person, namely on the Republican side, if you're just appealing to racists, you need to roll that back because, getting through the primary is one thing. Getting through a general is a whole nother thing. And we have a lot of African Americans who are watching the entire race because Black folks are not a monolith. They are Black Republicans, they're Black Democrats, they're Black independents, but they Black first.
Yeah.
And running on racism will get you unelected in Georgia.
How do we ensure that we just turn out? Because there will be those who are, I would argue that a couple of these candidates, especially Jones and Jackson, are running on racism just because their ads alone. Like the first time couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Yeah.
So how do we just make sure that we turn out? I think that's the difference maker in Georgia, right? Is do we turn out? Because it's over if we turn out.
Yeah. I think that's on the candidates. If you don't have a plan for Black people,
that part,
why would Black people show up for you?
So we don't get stuck with Burt Jones.
For those of us that know that.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. And moment of full transparency. I went to high school with Bert.
Mm-hmm.
Played football together.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
There are a lot of black people that like Bert. Bert shows up in a lot of communities. I can't say that for some of the candidates on the Democratic side. Now, who I'm going to vote for, I'm not saying I'm voting for Bert. But what I am saying is they would be very wary of saying that, oh, I'm just going to be black on the ballot and I'm going to win.
No, that's very fair. That's very fair. So as a strategy, we asked this question before. You can vote in any party's primary in Georgia.
Yes.
You can only vote in one. Should we be voting in the Republican primary?
No.
Why do you think that's a bad strategy?
Because, again, they are playing race politics. And if they play race politics, both of them lose. And I would tell this to them, to their face, and to their consultants. Stop it. Trumpism don't work in Georgia. I'm going to say that again. Trumpism does not work in Georgia.
Well, how do you say that? Because I'm sure they would say, well, look at 2024.
Look at Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I was going to ask you about that because they're celebrating that Sean he lost, but he didn't lose by what they thought.
A plus 20 Trump district got within 5 points. How does that happen unless Trump politics don't work in Georgia? And the reason why I say this is because he was within an eyelash of going to a Georgia prison.
Who?
Donald Trump. So, again, if a grand jury in Fulton County was willing to indict him, a trial jury would have convicted him. And nobody in Georgia would have said a thing. Because, again, this state is different when it comes to civil rights. We understand when you're lying to us. We understand when you're gaslighting us. So instead of talking about national stuff, talk about Georgia. Talk about how we're going to continue to move the state forward economically. Talk about how we're going to educate our children and become the best for education the way we are the best for business. Talk about how you're going to pay the farmers who are struggling right now because of these high tariffs and these gas prices. Ugh. That's what you need to focus on, not whether
they just want to talk about trans kids. That's all they want to talk about is trans kids.
Listen. Apparently they're going to take over the world.
Listen, that's not the main issue in Georgia. The main issue in Georgia is how I'm going to put food on my table for my children. That is a universal conversation. How are we going to make sure that each family is able to move forward in the next generation? I think if we focus on that and drop all the racial overtones, we're not in 1925.
That part. We're not revisiting Jim Crow.
No, we're not. Absolutely
not happening.
And what I would warn them is that federal courts in Georgia open Monday through Friday. If you pass something that's unconstitutional, we're going to sue you and we're going to win. So don't talk about, we're going to mass deport. For where we mass deporting folks?
That part.
Does Georgia border Mexico?
Nope.
No. The only border we have in Georgia is Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. So we don't have a migrant problem in Georgia. We definitely don't have a violent migrant problem.
That part.
Most of the crime that's committed in Georgia is committed by Georgians.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Final thought.
I just think that we have an opportunity to do something special. But I want people to force the politician to earn the vote. Because we can make Georgia a better place. I travel this state. I love this state. I love the political conversations happening in this state. It's time out for Trump. We move past him. Okay. In the midterms, he will lose. In the midterms, he's going to get impeached. He'll probably get convicted. We need to move forward into the next generation. So what I would say, and I'm not endorsing anybody at this point, but what I would say is we need to elect people in Georgia that speak to Georgia's values. Georgia's values are civil rights. Georgia's value is economic and education. Georgia's value is making Georgia better. Let's make Georgia great the first time.
I declare and decree we will do exactly that, Lord, in Jesus' name. We will see it be done in November 2026. That's my final word.
Just as a reminder that Griggs is a civil rights attorney. So the stuff he's saying is not like I just went and got some joke. He's a civil rights attorney and has been for a very long time. So he know what he's talking about. Just to put that disclaimer on there for those that just thought he was no. He's a civil rights attorney. But special thanks to our seasonal friend, Attorney Gerald Griggs. And we will see you guys same time, same place on the Leadership Men Live podcast with the host, Ricardo Rice, and my co-host,
Simone Cherie.